morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday, day 3 of our challenge. We'll get started right away. Today we're going to focus purely on inhaling in. We're going to study the biology and physiology of inhaling to give you a better sense of what exactly is happening when you take a breath in. And what I found for myself is that information, that technical information, really supports my capacity to be mindful of an experience that we've done literally countless times over our lives. So it really sort of amplifies this opportunity to be intimate with our process. And then we're going to get into the technical mechanics of how to empower the inhale, mainly working with the duration. How can we expand upon the duration of our breath so we can gradually start to expand upon the duration of KUMBHAKA, the breath technique, but also expand upon our lung capacity. And those two sort of qualities go hand in hand. And then the final element will be the philosophical dimension of what an inhale represents to yogis, which is fairly profound if you take the time and leap into the ideology of these mystics, which is always sort of beautiful and enriching. So I'll run through it quickly one time, all of those aspects, the biology and physiology, the new mechanics, and then the philosophy. But then when we close our eyes and we're in our meditative state, focusing on the breath, but still engaging KUMBHAKA, I'll reiterate those details. And what you should find is that you have a greater capacity to connect to them. And this is, for me, evidence. The one way of recognizing the immediate consequence of meditating. The second we close our eyes and still ourselves, there's this strange heightened ability to be sincere and to be sort of open-minded and open and receive information and interact with experience with an open heart. So just sort of look forward to that. All right, cool. So right off the bat, let's get going. Again, good morning. Day 3, we're focusing on the inhales. So nice tall spine, your eyes are open, you're sort of just like listening to me and, monitor your breath naturally. But the inhale in Sanskrit, for those that enjoy Sanskrit, is called Pooraka. And so the way I remember Pooraka is the breath pours into the body. Pooraka. Pooraka. And so as you breathe in, every time you breathe in, there's air, there's atmosphere in front of you. The air obviously moves in through the nose. In case you don't know, you should always be breathing through the nose. There are a couple books that really sort of emphasize the point. One is called Breathe, which is sort of like it's a little bit newer, big bright yellow cover. And then the other is The Oxygen Advantage, which really discusses the value of carbon dioxide actually. But a main part of these books is the necessity of breathing through the nose from the onset of life onward, and the unwillingness or the sort of like lack of habit in breathing through the nose and breathing through the mouth really creates a lot of change in our body and physiology. So breathing through the nose. And so as we inhale, the air rushes into our nose, and so you're breathing right now, and inside your nose there's all this hair, right, this cilia. And so the job of this cilia is that it's going to collect all of this dust and debris and skin, and it's going to move it down into your throat. Inside the nose and sinus cavity, there's a mucus layer that creates nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a chemical that is only created inside the sinus cavity and helps dilate the blood vessels to prepare the circulatory system to process oxygen and process CO2. And so while you're breathing right now, it's just like visualize that. You have these tunnels of tissue that are moving air, covered in hair, covered in mucus, and all of this serves a function to help your body operate as best as it can. And so now as you're taking this breath in, the breath moves into the throat. The throat is divided into 3 sections. The pharynx, sort of the back of the mouth, and as the air moves down into sort of where the Adam's apple and neck is, this is the larynx, and then into the trachea. And so at this point, the air inside your chest breaks out into 2 sections, right? The bronchi, and then moves into your lungs. And then from the lungs, there are all these pustules, these little globules. These are called alveoli. And from there, the oxygen is diffused into the blood, reaches out into the rest of the body, and vice versa. And so one more time to reiterate, you're taking this breath in, the air moves into your nose. Cilia, all these hairs catch the debris. There's this mucus lining in the sinus cavity that creates nitric oxide. The nitric oxide prepares the circulatory system to process the chemicals inside the air. The blood vessels dilate. You can actually feel the breath move down into the throat, making its way into the trachea, breaking apart into the lungs, and then the lungs are inflating using the diaphragm and belly. And so the mechanics of breathing, as you inhale muscularly, the diaphragm, right, this horizontal sheath of muscle contracts down and takes the shape of a salad bowl, a deep salad bowl. And in that, the volume inside your lungs or inside your rib cage, the thoracic cavity, is allowed to expand. The expansion of your lungs themselves is a passive experience. The active experience is the mobilizing of the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles inside the ribs. And so you really want to feel that pressure build in the abdomen as you breathe in. Now inside your ribs or within your ribs, there are these perpendicular laced muscles called intercostal muscles. One set contracts as you inhale, one set contracts as you exhale. And so you have some range of motion within the ribs and the upper chest. The bottom portion of your rib cage is more flexible than the upper portion of your rib cage. So you're trying to appreciate that as well. So you're breathing in. Air is moving into the nose, the hairs in your nose, the cilia are catching debris. One more time. You can feel the air moving down into your throat. Subtly remarkable once you take a second to appreciate it. Your diaphragm, right at the bottom of your rib cage, is contracting. Your belly is extending or distending forward. The rib cage itself is expanding. The bottom half of the rib cage is more flexible than the upper half of the rib cage. And so these are the natural mechanics we're going to exaggerate to increase our lung capacity, increase our duration. And the last detail philosophically, the inhale is called Pooraka, the breath pours in, but it's attached to an idea associated with consciousness. So as you breathe in, notice this rush of presence. A new wave of oxygen comes to replenish every cell in your body, so that has to be accounted for. The sympathetic nervous system is triggered with the inhale, a rush of focus and alertness. And so all of these physiological consequences proved that consciousness is heightened as you breathe in. Two yogis, circumstantial, subjective opinion. And so for this reason, they said that during the inhale, consciousness enters from heaven into flesh. It descends. And the term for this descent is called Avaroha. A-V-A-R-O-H-A. Avaroha. And so the goal of today's session is to understand what's going on with our inhales, to expand upon our baseline counts, and to thread in some symbolic meaning. So at this point, we're going to really commit to our practice. Let's work with our posture. Tilt your hips forward, feel the spine extend. Sympathetic nervous system triggers. Wrists resting on knees, straighten your arms completely, hyperextend through the elbows, rotate your elbows down towards the floor, spread your fingers very, very wide. So wide that the skin on your palm starts to stretch. Now take a second, attempt to feel the tips of your fingers. Build your sensitivity. And attempt to recognize some form of tingling, buzzing, or vibrational sensation in the skin of your fingertips. This is nerve sensation. And as you lock onto that sensation, which will prove helpful as our technique increases, notice that that tingling, buzzing sensation actually feels good. It's pleasant. And so this tingling sensation is called sukshma, and it is evidence of your body's aliveness. Until your final breath, the body will buzz. Bring a random finger to each thumb. Again, this hand gesture is called the mudra, hasta mudra, hand gesture, and hold it delicately. I compared it to flower petals yesterday, in contrast to the rigidity of your body. Now let's start to work with our inhales. We're going to break our inhales into 3 sections. We're going to breathe into our belly, then breathe into our chest, and then attempt to inhale into our collarbone and throat. And then we'll resume with KUMBHAKA. Then hold the breath, exhale normally, hold the breath. So again, we're dissecting the inhale into 3 segments. The inhale is called Pooraka. So as you breathe in, you're counting, breathe into the belly. Hold for a moment, feel that pause. Segment the breath. Then inhale, breathe into the chest. You'll feel the lungs inflate towards the collarbone. Again, pause. And then take a second to breathe into the collarbone and throats. Hold your breath for your baseline. Exhale for your baseline. Hold your breath for your baseline. And so the yogic mind was a uniquely inquisitive mind, curious more than anything of themselves. Because they appreciated that the experience of life, the experience of reality, good or bad, hinged on an understanding and the existence of their own being. And so they took the time to investigate their biology, their psychology, and their spirituality. As you're breathing in, physiologically feel the diaphragm, this horizontal sheath of muscle, contracting at your will, allowing the passive lungs to expand because the space inside your rib cage is expanding. In that, you should feel pressure in the abdomen. The muscles caked within your rib cage, intercostal muscles, contract in sets to help open up the rib cage from front to back and from left to right. The bottom half of the rib cage is more flexible than the upper half of the rib cage, and for that reason you should feel a challenge in the attempt of breathing up into the collarbone and throat. Diaphragm contracts down. It takes the shape of a salad bowl. The lungs expand in all directions, forwards, backwards, left and right, up and down. You need to feel that. Muscles within the ribs are contracting. You're actioning the torso. And now take a second to appreciate the biology. As you breathe in, the air is cool compared to when you exhale. And so the sinus cavity takes the time to warm the air, making it easier for the body to process. As the air rushes in, familiar at this point, visualize and attempt to feel all the hairs in your nose. Consider and visualize the lining of mucus inside the nose. And consider that within that mucus, there is a chemical response that creates nitric oxide. Visualize your blood vessels, arteries, and veins opening as this new wave of air comes into the body. You can feel this cool air rush down the throat. The pharynx, right behind the mouth and jaw, the larynx, in the neck itself, and the trachea. Breaking out into the lungs, left and right. As the lungs inflate, as the diaphragm contracts down, little pustules, little spheres called alveoli process the chemistry in the air and diffuse it into the blood. At this point, the breath is still segmented. The inhale. Inhale into the belly, pause. Inhale into the chest, pause. Inhale into the collarbone, pause. Now let's take the time to work with KUMBHAKA naturally. One steady, unbroken inhale, hold the breath. A steady, unbroken exhale, hold the breath. Whatever your baseline is, add 1 or 2 counts. So you're challenging yourself, you're expanding upon your lung capacity. And with every breath in, start to appreciate the subjective experience of breathing in, a surge of wakefulness, a surge of presence, a surge of alertness. The yogis felt this, documented this, and for those reasons believed that consciousness descended into flesh every time they breathed in. Something like the tides rushing into shore and rushing away from shore. The term for this descent is called Avaroha. And so your intimacy with this sensation of alertness, which also comes with a sense of power and confidence, if you look deeply into it, will become absolutely helpful as we push deeper into this technique. Every breath reminds us of our power. Every breath confirms Shakti. Now to enrich the experience, your relationship of just inhaling, of Pooraka, Try to feel all of these things at once. Feel the biology of the sinus cavity, nose, and throat. The patterns of this cool air as it moves into your face and body. Appreciate the physiology of your diaphragm and intercostal muscles, and at the same time, the consequence of oxygen rushing into your cells. And appreciate that in the same way that the experience of our lives, the opportunity to explore reality in whatever capacity we actually do, depends on the existence of self. The existence of self depends on these inhales. And that for this reason, the breath, more than anything, is especially worthy of investigation and devotion. One round of KUMBHAKA left. Inhale, feel all of that. Hold your breath. Exhale. And then for this last bottom retention or external retention, hold your breath for as long as you possibly can. Let the CO2 levels build. Feel the muscles tighten and that sense of fire increase. That fire is acidity. After that, breathe normally and externalize your mind. Just pay attention to the world around you. Meditation at its simplest is an effort to fall in love with the world again and again and again with greater intensity. Slow down the breath. You're breathing normally at this point. Notice the breath has returned to an essentially automatic process, yet all of those details are still there. And gently bring your hands to heart center. Keep the spine tall. Relax your shoulder blades down the back. Important to note at this point, the technique allows us to enrich our sincerity, to empower our connection. The technique isn't necessarily meditation itself. So here, just like yesterday, prove your sentience and boost your sincerity. Push back the need to be elsewhere. And appreciate your inhale specifically. Life's brilliance is its codependency. Every atom relies upon every other atom. Every organism relies upon every other organism. It's a system of harmony that is unprecedented and truly unfathomable. But here we are, attempting to appreciate the worth of this automatic tiny little process that is often overlooked. Pooraka. Every breath in, consciousness descends symbolically. Avaroha. Thumb knuckles to third eye center. Again, symbolic gesture, just like a handshake, just like a high five. Press your thumbs into the skin of your forehead, and now just focus on that tingling sensation, very similar to what you were attempting to feel in your fingertips at the beginning of the session. And from that intense focus, just recognize yourself, that you are the observer. And one last time, acknowledge that this self is the bridge from which we are permitted to experience the world. So sort of important. Take one more inhale. Pooraka. One more exhale. Release your wrists to your knees. And as your eyes open, I'm no longer meditating.